Welcome, moviegoers. How are we doing? Good, good. Do you have your ticket? All right, what do we have here? Real Swell. Good choice. You want to be in Auditorium 70? It's straight ahead and to the left. Enjoy. Mission Impossible Final Reckoning. I just left the theater, just getting home, and my initial thought as I was watching the movie and even after I left was this movie is too long. And in actuality, I believe it's only 2.5 hours, I believe, but it felt so much longer than that. Now, Dead Reckoning, a movie that came out a couple of years ago, or maybe it was last year, it wasn't intended to be a two-part movie, but the reception for that first part kind of left Christopher McQuarrie and Tom Cruise in need of rewriting the part two. They rewrote it as its own independent film, but still a follow up to Dead Reckoning instead of just Dead Reckoning 2. Now, as I was watching the movie, there were probably 3 or 4 times I asked myself, how long is this movie? Because it just waits around for things to happen. The antagonist of the first movie was kind of twofold. We had the entity, and then there was Gabriel. And Gabriel gave a face to the antagonist. He gave a face to what Ethan and the team was fighting against, while at the same time, this entity, this AI that was becoming self aware and began to make decisions for humanity based on what it's learned because of its AI nature. Now, that is a story thread that reappears over and over again in movies of late, given the advancement of AI. And when I reviewed Dead Reckoning, actually, I mentioned a movie called Eagle Eye with Shia LaBeouf that came out in, I believe, 2008. It was a long time ago. But the same concept for that movie is kind of the foundation for these two Mission Impossible films. And to a point, it can be interesting depending on what you do with it. I didn't mind Eagle Eye, actually. I thought it was pretty good. But Dead Reckoning, I immediately got Eagle Eye comparisons. I got the feeling that it was kind of going to be the same thing. And they kind of tried to throw you off by giving you like the first 7 to 8 minutes of that movie as just exposition, explaining to you what this threat was. And they do the same thing with part two, or Final Reckoning, the movie that just came out. The first 5 to 7 minutes of this movie is just a recap of not only Dead Reckoning, but the previous movies in this franchise. There was a lot of nostalgia for the entire franchise in this movie. It calls back to a lot. We get flashbacks of the previous movies, and it kind of felt like No Time to Die, Daniel Craig's last Bond movie, where they kind of tie everything into what's happening in this final movie. And it says, everything that you've done is leading up to this. All the other missions that you've had in the past were an amalgamation of what's happening right now. And it was fate or destiny, and it was all written, essentially. And that felt, I don't know, it didn't feel captivating to me. The story didn't feel captivating. The action, the acting, the direction. Let me pause on the direction. But the cinematography, the sites where they were visiting, it all looked good. But in between where it looked good, there was either exposition or just reminiscing or in silence, people moving about and moving about the plot. It was fetch quest after fetch quest, but literally in silence. There was a long stretch of this movie where we've got characters actively doing something, but there's no other sound, not even them talking. And then randomly they will say a word or a phrase, and it's just a signal to the audience, oh, are you still there? That's kind of what it felt like, because we could actually see with our eyes what it is they've said verbally, and it wasn't necessary. But it was just to break up that silence. But at the end of the movie, as it wraps up, it doesn't really close the chapter on Mission Impossible. And that's what I thought was happening, given some of the things that Tom Cruise has said about the movie. I thought this was kind of a farewell to the IMF, but it doesn't feel like that. The movie didn't end in such a way that these movies can't continue. And I don't necessarily think that they should, but when you put determining words in your titles like final or end or last, it kind of gives the impression that it's over. But the movie doesn't give you that impression throughout the script and throughout the plot, and then definitely as the movie ends. I talked about the antagonist being this AI. We lose our human antagonist in this movie, and what we are fighting against is time, not even the AI, because the threat is something that no Mission Impossible movie is going to let happen. We already know that the end game for this AI can't come to pass. So we're just waiting until they figure it out. And they give us this timer, and it says, oh, you have to have this done by here, by this time, or the world ends. Well, the world's not going to end. We know that. So we're just waiting. Similar to Fallout, where there was a timer in that movie, and at the end, he's frantically pressing on that button. And what was the catchphrase? I forget what it was, but he said something ridiculous at the end while he was trying to press that button. But again, we knew that end game wasn't going to come to pass. And we're just waiting to see how they figure out preventing it. And that's what this movie was. It was a romp around the globe. It was a romp through different military factions. It was a romp through the ideals that some people may have given the choice to surrender to this AI. Different ideological factions within the country, all over the world, they kind of rise up. There's expositional news stories about what the AI means to people now, and the uprising and the revolution that may come. But again, none of it felt threatening. It was just, okay, that's not going to happen. I guess I just have to wait until the end of the movie to figure out what they do about it. I would say a good 20 to 30 minutes, if I'm being conservative, is just filler. It's almost as if, they had the script for Dead Reckoning Part 2, and they rewrote part of it, but it wasn't long enough. So they inserted at different points in the movie just filler screen time to make the movie seem bigger than it was plot wise. Again, visually, the acting, the cinematography, it looked great, but the plot wasn't 2.5 hours long. It was probably just 2 hours, maybe an hour and 50 minutes. And if they could have cut out that fat, I think I would have enjoyed it more. The movie by no means is bad. I don't think I'm trying to give off that impression, but it is too long. It is almost excruciatingly too long by 20 to 30 minutes. Again, being conservative. But I enjoyed it as a whole. I think that it's worth the watch. The theater that I was in, it was packed. I know audiences are going to flock to it, but I am curious what the next weekend will say about it once everyone has had a chance to see it and sit through the 2.5 hours. Maybe it's just me, and I accept that. But it was too long. It was too long. Thank you for coming to this screening of Real Swell. I hope you enjoy. As you head out, I've got 3 things to ask of you. Number 1, pick up your trash. These ushers don't get paid enough. Number 2, make sure you are following so you don't miss the next screening. And number 3, hit that heart for me. I'll see you all next time. Make sure you got your ticket.